So I've been to the dentist, and my mouth is still a little bit numb. So it feels to me that I still have. It seems hard to talk, but maybe it's just what it feels to me. Anyway, I just wanted to make a video. I wanted to talk about the Buddha nature, and I think it's really hard for the mind or the ego to accept that actually the Buddha nature is not something that's really hard to get. Actually, you just need a little bit of self-compassion, and then it's really easy to just let go. And then in this letting go, there is already this loving presence. But of course, if you're full of fragmentation and all these fragments inside of you are battling against each other, then you cannot let go. And I understand what it is like when you feel like life is just suffering and there's no escape from it. You know, I also see that there are a lot of people who are, who have been in conflict with themselves. They have been in conflict with themselves for decades. There's conflict in the mind, there's conflict in the body, and they just don't want to have that pain anymore, this emotional, internal pain. And then they hear somewhere, there's a thing called awakening or spiritual enlightenment. And then the first thing they hear is that the mind is just an illusion. Thoughts are not real. Don't believe the mind. You're not the body, you're also not your feelings. Just observe them from a detached place. And that, to me, at a certain point, that is an important step to do. But when you are really, when you have been someone who was in conflict with yourself for such a long time, then you cannot just simply choose this path of bypassing. You have to learn how to be compassionate with yourself on a relative level. I mean, being compassionate with your personal self before letting go of that personal self. Be compassionate to that personal self. You cannot just hate that personal self for so long and then just simply say, I'm abandoning you. Because that's just a continuation of that self-hatred. So you have to start with being with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm here for myself. What do I really need right now? Start to talk positive to yourself in your mind instead of constantly criticizing yourself. Instead of trying to escape yourself in those negative feelings, learn to be with yourself and regulate yourself until it feels natural to just, until you get a glimpse of what it feels like to be self-compassionate. Because that's the beginning of self-love. But then that self-love doesn't have to be limited to the personal self, but instead, at this point, that's when you can finally then listen to those teachings that say you're not the mind, you're not the body. But then it doesn't feel anymore as if you're letting go into death, as if you're letting go into nothingness, but you're letting go into love. I also had to come to this understanding that this is a very important, phase in this whole awakening journey. You cannot simply let go of yourself. You first have to love yourself and then let go of that self so that there is just love remaining. Someone asked me in my last video if I'm even afraid of anything. If I'm not afraid of losing things that I hold dear. If I'm not afraid of, bad things happening. And to be honest, right now, the more I'm being self-compassionate, and the more that I feel the presence of God by letting go, I feel more and more like a little, as if I'm back in my childhood. I enjoy things. I still sometimes have feelings of, anxiety, but they are not as big. And if they are there, then I'm there for them. It's not, oh no, I'm afraid I'm not spiritual because I'm afraid I should, you know. But if there is a sensation of fear, I'm there, and I know that the Buddha nature, the consciousness, the beingness, it's here. And just by being here with this feeling, it is regulating it. It is being loved. It is being integrated. It's like a little presence there that is saying to that feeling, it's okay, you can be here. I'm not abandoning you, but I'm welcoming you. And then in this self-compassion, sometimes I get intense emotions, but there is a great release then, and fear becomes less and less. And I came to the conclusion that, most of your fears and sufferings, they just live in your mind. Life is not perfect. Life is not paradise. But it's definitely also, it's not hell either. I have seen a comment on another video, on a reel, where someone said, life is just suffering, and like that's it. And then he was explaining why he's saying that, and then he says, so 99% of people are just suffering and only 1% are actually happy. And even those happy people are not really, really happy. Life is just suffering because there are so many criminals, there are so many victims, there are so many people who are starving, who don't have any water to drink. And yes, all these things are real. But why can't, this person has a phone and also has some free time to use that phone. So why can't you just use that free time to become a positive individual so that you have a positive impact on other human beings? Instead, you simply choose to become a source of negativity by complaining about all these things. And you have to start with yourself and alleviate your own suffering first by being compassionate with yourself and by loving yourself and by telling yourself, I can do this. I'm doing great. I'm proud of myself. Being positive to yourself until there's a real change in yourself, and then you can just rest in that beingness and receive. You're like a channel through which that divine essence can come through, and there's just pure love. There's a sense of being limitless, because you're no longer really bound to only this physical reality. But you're also not just like a detached monk on a mountain who's just waiting to die, who's already basically dead. So you can use your time, if you're not one of those people who are actively starving right now, actively dying from not having enough water to drink. If you're not one of those people, use your energy and time to invest in your own happiness, invest in your own to get rid of your suffering first, instead of becoming a source of negativity. And then then you have found yourself. First you find yourself on a relative level. This is me. I'm not trying to find anyone outside of me anymore to give me love, but I'm giving myself love. I'm asking myself, what do I need? How can I make sure that I'm happy? How can I make sure that I'm feeling emotionally more regulated? What can I do to, you know, maybe improve my minerals, or to improve my sleep, or, you know, stuff like that? Just actively putting in the work to not discipline myself, but love myself. And then I have found myself on a relative level, and then there is this self-compassion into which I can let go. And then I realize that this relative person is just limited. It's not all there is. It's not truly, essentially who I am. But essentially who I am, I'm something indescribable. I don't even want to use words like I'm non-dual presence, or I'm all, or I'm the universe. Sometimes I like to use these words, but if I'm really being honest, I cannot describe what I am. I don't know what I am, but I know that its fragrance is real love. Not just romantic love or a little bit of happiness, but it's real love. It connects you to every human being, to every animal, and also to every object. And I cannot explain why. But please don't just say life is suffering and everything's miserable. Use your time, start where you are, and start to become a source of positivity for yourself first. And then finally you fill up that cup within yourself. You're no longer then emotionally dependent on others' approval, the love of your partner, or the validation of your partner or your parents, or substances. And that takes time, or food, or whatever, you know. You start to learn that actually the reason why your life is so miserable is because you're constantly trying to regulate your nervous system. You're trying to fill up your empty heart with those toxic things. And once you put in actual love into yourself, your heart starts to become full. And you don't require you're no longer dependent on anything outside of you to keep your heart full. So that's when you become a light unto yourself. You are now independent. You're now a whole individual. And when you are this whole individual, then you can throw it away. So then the only thing that's left is God. And when I say God, I'm not please don't imagine what I mean by that. You know, even in the Bible it says, don't imagine what God looks like. It's not a thing. It's not a person. It's best to not have any idea about what I mean when I say God, but it's better if you would just experience it yourself. First, start by loving yourself, and then that greater love will take over also when you're choosing to let go. And then you will know what I mean when I say God. Or maybe you can even relate with me right now when you're watching this video and also have this experience of, you know, letting go, and just, you know, that there's this loving presence everywhere. So yes, you got this.